Welcome back and thanks for tuning in. Well, it's finally time to finish off this project. I've done most of the work on the shell, and now what I need to do is make some drawers, 16 drawers. So what I've done here is I have cut a blank. This is just a piece of 3/4 inch plywood I had laying around, and I've cut one of the dimensions to the size of the drawers because they're all 4 by 4 by 4 basically. And I want to make sure it fits in all the holes, just in case some of the glue up didn't go quite as I planned. But it fits in all of them, and now all I need to do is cut the acrylic. This is an awful lot of pieces, and those of you who haven't cut acrylic before, the reason why the saw blade is as high as it is, this is 1/8 inch acrylic, and if I put the saw blade down low, it deflects it up, and you end up with a bit of a bevel on the edge. And the edges are very important in this kind of glue up. You want them as square as possible, and most importantly, all the same. So that stop you see I have there, I set that, and then I cut the blank, the one I was testing all of the drawers, make sure everything fit. That's the same position. I haven't moved it. Now what I'm doing now is I'm cutting absolutely every one of these to that same dimension. And it's important. If you, like I said, if you're doing a weld, it's not the same as doing a glue where you have a bit of wiggle room. This has to be fairly accurate. If I were to use a weld-on or something that's a little more viscous, then I have a little bit more give in this. But in this particular case, methylene chloride, which is what I'm using, it just wicks into the gap, well, the seam basically, and there is literally, like I said, no margin for error. So that's why I set this once, and then I cut all that dimension, all the pieces, and then I move on to the next dimension, making sure that, like I said, I don't adjust anything as far as the stop goes in between. That way they're all the same. If for some odd reason I've messed up on a dimension, I pretty much have to recut all of them on that side. Like shave just a very tiny amount off just to make sure that we're good. So what I'm doing here is each of those strips I cut, there was one at the end you saw that was just a little bit too short for the full 4 inches. So fortunately, due to some luck or good calculation here, it worked out that it was pretty much exactly where I needed to be for one of the other pieces. So as you can see here, I ended up with very, very little in the way of offcuts, which is great because I have a whole drawer full of small pieces, and sometime I'm going to get a project going where I can use them all up, but for the moment these things are just too small. So this is the final one. This is the only one that I actually had to measure really quite carefully. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set it, and I set it just a little bit bigger than I need. Now you'll see I do this an awful lot. I will cut something, and then if it has to be a very, very tight fit or very precise fit, I will go and I'll check it out, which is what I'm doing over there now. And then I'll set all these up. This is going to be not like this, but it's going to be one on either end of this. This fits inside. And it has to be, well, it doesn't have to be, I suppose, but it looks better if all the corners match up perfectly. So that's what I'm going to do here. So this is after some adjustments and making sure I had everything where I wanted it. Obviously, the two on the left are going to be one on each side, but I want to make sure it matches up to the corner. So the top's fine, and the bottom's good. So there you go. We're all set to cut the rest of the pieces. This is all the pieces. 16 on the left, 32 in each of the two piles on the right. And yeah, each of those 16 drawers requires 5 pieces. Now what I want to do, because I want to have a sliding protective door that's going to go down on the outside of this, is I'm going to just put a finger hole. So I drilled a test piece, as you saw there, and it's a little small, but I didn't want to make it too big because some of these screws I'm going to be putting here are going to be quite tiny, and I didn't want there to be too much chance of them popping out, especially if I fill the drawers up quite high. So it made it small enough that I can actually get my finger in it, but not too big that I'm going to have an issue with that popping out or falling down and playing 52 screw pickup. So that's the end of those. If you want to see them being glued up, tune into my Wednesday video. I did the assembly. I did four batches at a time. It took roughly 15 to 20 minutes each. It would have made this video really, really long, so I put a separate video up for that. And yeah, check into it if you like. So this is going to be the sliding door. So this has to be perfectly square, because if it doesn't, it's not going to slide down. It's going to bind. And I had noticed that one of the edges seemed to be a little bit rough. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put it on the sled and just shave off a very, very small amount off of one side just to make sure it is perfectly square. It'll make it a lot much simpler. I suppose I could have just sanded it down once I had done the final cut, but this keeps it nice and, well, straight and square. So there you go. I'm going to do that, and then I need to cut it to size, and I want the top part to be relatively flush to the top of the shell. And the other one, of course, has to fit nice and smoothly and not too much friction with running down those two runners I made. So there you go. Not hard. Oh yeah, I'm just going to cut this just a nick. See, there's two dimensions on this, 17.5 and 17 1/8. And just in case I messed up on the 17.5, I wanted to make sure. So I measured it, and did a little nick, of course, and I cut it all out. Next one, of course, I'm going to do the usual trick I do, which is to creep up on it. So I'm going to, even though it needs to be 17 1/8, I am going to cut it just a shade, not even like a 30-second more, and then test fit it. And it turned out it was going to be just a little bit tight. And then, yeah, just very, very incremental shaves off of that, just to make sure that, well, it goes in and out of the hole, or groove I should say, smoothly, but not too loose. So there you go. That's the process for making this. And the only other thing I need to do for the door is figure out a way out of opening it up. I can obviously put a handle on or something along those lines, but I want to keep it relatively streamlined. I don't want to have anything sticking up that can get caught on stuff, because it is going to be loaded up into my vehicle and banged around all kinds of stuff, so I didn't really want something that could get caught on things. So I decided to stick with the finger hole concept, and I'm going to drill with a Forstner bit 1-inch hole, because this particular one doesn't need to be as small as the ones I did on the individual drawers, because this is just a panel that is going to restrain all of them from, sliding out during transit and that sort of stuff. So it's perfectly good that way, and the 1-inch is much more comfortable for my fingers. So there you go. I'm going to drill that through. And then all that's left is a whole pile of sanding, and I'm not going to show all that, of course. And then I need to protect this, so I am going to coat it in boiled linseed oil, just like I said, as a protection for it. Like I said, it's going to get scratched up, banged up, and everything else. It is not a pretty thing, it is a functional thing. So there you go. I was going to drill this through on my scrap piece of tabletop, and nice thing about Forstner bits is you can feel when it pops through. And there we are. And I don't have to drill all the way through my tabletop. And it's just a piece of scrap plywood, so it doesn't really matter. There we go. That is done. And the reason why I did that on there is because that way I wouldn't get any blowout at the bottom. A little piece of splinter there, but that pops off. And there you go. Now a whole pile of sanding, which is, like I said, I'm going to show. Here's the door in place. And like I said, it slides up nice and easily. No real friction involved there. And those are all the drawers. All 16 of them. It was kind of cool making them. But yeah, whenever you do these apothecary style setups, it does take some time to get everything set up. And then here you go, it just slides down. A little stiff at the beginning, but I haven't sanded anything yet. And once it's all sanded down, it's going to be fine. So here you go. My mandatory 5 seconds of sanding. It took a while. It's, again, if anyone's ever interested in seeing more sandy, just let me know. So after that's all sanded down, I didn't really go to too much of a fine detail on it. I think I just used 120 all around. And then I'm going to put some, like I said, boiled linseed oil on here. The last bit of the old container. And then I'm going to use the new one. And that's it. That's pretty much the whole project from start to finish. I'm only going to show you the first coat here. It's going to take a few coats, and then I'm not going to bother doing the actual individual drawer compartments because, well, as this stuff sets, it could, almost glue itself to the acrylic. I haven't had any problem with the small one you see behind me there, the one that's on the tabletop. But there's no point in, finishing it anyway because it's never actually going to see any of the outside world. So I'm going to do a few coats, has to set, and then I'm going to put this thing to use. And of course, going forward, I'll let you know about any kind of problems I have with it, or if it's big enough, which is probably one of the things I am kind of concerned about. There you go. Here it is, all finished. All the drawers roughly finished. I think it's one coat at this point. And you can see the individual cubby holes are not finished at all. And there you go. Thanks for watching. Leave comments. Let me know what you think about all this. And I'll see you in the next video. And bye for now.